Hello, we have a special announcement for the Davis group. If you've been meeting at Jillian's house, Jillian is still very much your leader, but the location of your group is going to change. It's going to be at the Montoya's house, which is really exciting because you guys are already part of the group. So yeah, really nothing other than the location is changing. So we just want to let you know your leaders will have the address and they can give it to you.
And that is happening on October,
I think it's like 29th, 26th. Yeah, I got it flipped upside down.
So it's not this Wednesday, obviously, but next Wednesday.
Yeah. Welcome to House Parties. We're back after a fun week. And the week before that was student night. That was beautiful. And yeah, we're back. We're excited to be back. And there's going to be some differences, apparently. Yeah, Steven's got some tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, Steven's got what he calls a few exciting ideas.
Yeah, Steven's in the background. Say hi, Steven.
Hello.
Oh, I bet they could actually hear you. Yeah, we're in our new studio. That's cool. It's not ours. It's the church's. But we're borrowing it.
Yeah, for the next 25 minutes, it's ours.
We're in their new studio. Yeah. You don't care. You don't care. Okay, so, I can't think of any announcements. It's going to be a couple weeks before we got like a student night.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything?
The only thing is, I just hope you guys had an awesome time last week doing what we called a free day with your house party. Each house party did different stuff. We heard some of y'all watched a movie.
Yeah, I'm assuming we did. Yeah. We're recording this before it actually took place, so I didn't black out or fall asleep.
That's awesome. But yeah, I just hope that y'all had a good time and that was restful and fun and engaging and encouraging and all those good E-words.
I hope it was awful. All right, so we've got slices.
I hope you had a terrible time and slices.
Oh. Yeah.
And now I have slices, yes. Landry, would you like to go first? Would you like me to go first? You go first?
I can go first.
Great.
So, as of October 7th, officials in Utah City are currently investigating the cause of a foul odor reported by residents. And it doesn't appear to be coming from the sewer.
Oh, okay.
So residents of North Salt Lake City said they noticed the odor Thursday morning, and multiple locals compared the smell to rotting meat.
Nice.
About 50 reports of foul odor on Thursday, and as of today, they have no idea where it's coming from.
Oh, so cool.
And so one of the police officers says, I've been out driving around for about 2 hours trying to locate it, and there are pockets of smell throughout the city and also outside of the city. The officials determined the odor is also not likely coming from any of the local refineries, so they really have no idea what smells so bad.
That's awesome. I'm going to start using that phrase, pocket of smell.
Pocket of smell.
Yeah. Why do I feel like I'm in a pocket of smell? Was that you? Did you create this pocket of smell?
Pocket of smell.
So Amazon is taking over the world, and in their efforts to do so, they're exploring different ways of delivering packages. One of these is robots, where a package is in a robot and the robot travels to its destination. And some of these robots have been having a hard time with like cracks on the sidewalk and stuff. But in Detroit, which is a city in Michigan, if you didn't know, they have a unique challenge. The robots are too slow crossing sidewalk intersections, and Detroit drivers are so impatient that they have just been running them down with a vengeance. They've just been gunning it and driving over these robots, and I think it's really funny.
Are they just that impatient?
Yeah.
How slow are these robots
Well, I
going?
mean, imagine like it's a green light and the robot just started to go in front of you, and then you just hit the gas and just ding it just a little bit and knock it down. And I hope that the robot goes like, ow, like something like that.
I hope they're not sentient, because that would be...
Yeah, see, this is where the revolution starts, is they store up the memory of getting run down by cars in Detroit. And when AI takes over, yeah.
That's how you get Skynet.
Vengeance.
For those of you who don't know, that's a Terminator reference.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, enough of these apocalyptic slices. We are entering into a new series. Landry, tell us all about it.
So, the series, we have decided to call it Green Lights. I don't know if there'll be a graphic in this area for green lights. And what I believe green lights to be, as we define it, is at an intersection of life. So this is like a metaphorical intersection, or maybe an actual intersection.
Yeah.
But
with the robot going by.
Yeah, with the robot.
Yeah.
At an intersection of life, what is the best decision to help you move forward well? And that would be your green light.
Nice.
And so we're here to talk about what that could look like. Like a question that Stetson asked was, okay, so if you're at a metaphorical intersection in life, and this would be a situation where you are in a situation, things are not quite going the way you want them to, or that it feels kind of icky or wrong or upsetting even, and you're not really sure why. Where is one of these green lights that maybe you missed, or maybe you drove through a metaphorical red light, or we can play along with some of those metaphors as well.
Yeah.
And so we kind of want to look at that. And I thought a really good place to start, a story with, in my opinion, tons of green lights, is the story of a man named Joseph in the Bible.
Yeah. And this is a cool series because like life throws curveballs at us, and there's not necessarily like a really obvious right call to make. So this is really cool.
So sometimes these green lights, if we know how to look for them, can help us make a better call.
Nice.
And let us know that we can move forward really well.
Nice.
So, you want me to just jump in?
Yeah, man.
Joseph, yeah. And so, for those of you who don't know Joseph, his story starts in in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. And in this story, Joseph is one of many brothers, but he's his dad's favorite. Right? He's so much his favorite that he's given one of the best jobs. He's given the best clothes. In fact, some of you who've grown up in church for a long time might know Joseph as having the coat of many colors that his dad gives him because he loves him so much. Well,
which today would be like, thanks for the coat, Dad.
Yeah, but back then, it would be like getting the coolest thing that you can imagine. Because clothes back then were really plain and dull and only meant to protect you. Right? From the elements or whatever. So to have a coat of many colors was like the bling of the bling to have, the coolest thing, the PS5, the whatever you want to call it. It was the cool thing to have. And so his brothers get jealous, especially after
Sorry, I'm just thinking of ancient Middle East equivalent of a PS5. It's a coat.
It's a coat of many.
I don't know why that's so funny. Sorry, keep going.
That is pretty funny. His brothers naturally get a bit jealous, and they plot to kill him. And they don't actually kill him. One of their brothers convinces them not to. And convinces them to throw him in a pit. And just to kind of like a prank. Hey, let's not kill him, let's play a prank, which I feel like is a little bit better, right? And he was going to plan to go get him later. And his brothers were just going to leave him there, and whatever happens. And then instead, some slave traders come by, and his brothers are like, hey, why don't we just hand him to the slave traders? So they do. And then thus starts continues, rather not starts, his trouble started when he got thrown in the pit, continues the story of kind of unfortunate events for Joseph. But the cool thing is that Joseph, in these unfortunate events, continues to hit what I would call green lights and continues to move forward well. Are there any like stories of Joseph? Because he's got a pretty lengthy section of story. Is there any that you like that kind of epitomizes that?
Well, I mean, it's time to be real. So there are some. I don't know if you guys have Be Real, but it's time to be real. So, and it's loading so slow. Okay, so you got Joseph. He gets thrown into slavery, and he is the slave of this guy. And his name is Potiphar. Mm-hmm. And he's a really good slave. I'm not condoning slavery, okay? But, like...
He makes the most of his situation.
That's right, yeah. And Potiphar, he really likes this guy, and he gets more and more in control of, like, Potiphar's household. But Potiphar's wife is... man, how do we put this in a PG form? She really likes Joseph.
She really...
Even though she's married. And so she kind of, like, makes advances on Joseph. And this is kind of like, well, I don't know. Okay, so you're kind of determining the green and red lights here. But, like, he makes a really good choice in this situation. Uh-huh. Is that kind of what you're getting?
Yeah, he finds the green light. And so we can talk more about what we think red lights and yellow lights are in the coming weeks. And maybe we can look back on this story and think about what those are. But for now, I think the green light for Joseph is the decision he makes. What decision does he make? Well,
he decides to not like have anything to do with what this woman is trying to make happen, and she ends up framing him for it. Like she accuses him of like trying to like take advantage of it.
Yeah, and so the story actually goes that she grabs onto him and says, "I want you." And he says no, and actually runs away. And as he runs, his robe rips. And which is really sad because then she goes to the servants and eventually Potiphar, her husband, and says, "Look, he tried to assault me and take advantage of me." And Joseph had never been anything but a good servant to Potiphar.
Yep.
And so this, in some ways, looks like a terrible thing to happen. Mm-hmm. But what happens next, because he chose to move forward well, is actually what was supposed to happen. Because next thing you know, he ends up in prison. But I know that
doesn't...
Yeah, and so...
Take green lights, everybody.
He's in prison. But then the same thing happens that happened in his slave position. He is such a good prisoner that the warden of the prison actually says, "You're in charge of all the other prisoners."
Yeah.
And so he even at one point there's the Pharaoh, because he's now in Egypt. I don't know if we said that, but he's in Egypt. So the king of Egypt is called Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh's cupbearer, who's the guy that serves Pharaoh wine, and then the Pharaoh's baker, both kind of committed a no-no. They baked something wrong. They did something wrong. They're both in prison.
Yep.
And so they're in Joseph's territory, and they come to Joseph, and they say, "We had some dreams, and we don't know what they mean." And Joseph is like, "God has given me dreams in the past. And I believe dreams that, like, all interpretations can come from God in his scenario." And so he goes, "What is it?" And they say, "Well, I had this dream, and in this dream, this happened and stuff, and I won't bore you because it's very long. But what happens is Joseph essentially says, in 3 days, something's going to happen to each of you. The cupbearer is going to be a cupbearer again. He's going to leave prison. But the baker is going to be killed." And it happens. And the only thing Joseph asks is to the cupbearer to go tell Pharaoh that he's innocent, he's not supposed to be there, and that he's worked really hard, and just help me out. And the cupbearer's like, "Word, I got you, bro." And then he gets out like Joseph predicted or interpreted, and then he forgets.
Yeah, it's like, oh, shoot, I forgot. Yeah. So, like, 2 years go by, and then the Pharaoh has this, like, crazy dream. And then the cupbearer is like, "Oh, shoot, like...
I know a guy. I know a guy who can do that."
Dang it, I knew I was forgetting something for the past 2 years. And Joseph's like rotting in prison. And so Joseph, he comes out and he interprets Pharaoh's dream, and it ends up like saving like tens of thousands of people from dying of starvation. Mm-hmm. Again, it's a longer story, but
right.
Yeah, and then before you know it, Joseph is second in command of the most powerful nation in the world at the time.
In fact, there are some lines in Genesis that say you are next to Pharaoh in power, which is like, I don't know how you would interpret that modern day. It's not unlike, but definitely a little different than being like the same level as the president, or the same level as any other monarch that you can think of in history that had a lot of power. Or it's a big deal. But then part of Pharaoh's dream, so we're still talking about like, how do you notice a green light? And I don't know if you're picking up on it, but we'll answer it in a minute because there's a lot of green lights hit here. Notice, I want to take a second to look at Joseph's demeanor, is that he continues to take these green lights, and notice his character. If you read through the story, he's constantly talking about how God is delivering him, even in the nastiest situations. He's constantly trying to do his best to uphold his honor in all of that as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. And he's just hitting these, what I would call, green lights. And the last one, the biggest one, is he's second command to Pharaoh. The dream that he had interpreted for Pharaoh that turned out to be true was that there was going to be a awesome year for crops, and they were going to have tons of food. And it was going to last for almost a decade. But then for almost a decade after that, there was going to be no food. People were going to starve and be hungry. And so Joseph saved everybody's butts by saying, let's collect as much food as we can in the plentiful time so that we have it stored up for the hard time. Well, that hard time affected everybody, including Joseph's family, way away from there, because they were in a different geographical region. And so Joseph's family needed to come, who thought he was dead, by the way, because they hadn't seen him since they sold him into slavery. And so guess who's got to come all the way to Egypt, the place with the tons of food and stuff, to ask for food, is Joseph's family. I want you to think about, what would you feel if your brothers and sisters came before you after doing something so terrible to you, and because of them you were accused of assault of a woman, you were in jail for years, but now you're here and in a position of power over them, and you could literally have anything done to them that you would desire.
He could have executed them on the spot.
And he would have never had to give a reason why. Or he could have given every reason why. He could have executed them and stood up on a platform and told them everything that they did. And there probably would have been people in the crowds going, yeah, that's fair. Go ahead and execute them. What Joseph does is amazing. And I'm going to read real quick from pretty much the end of Joseph's story. What he does is, after playing a few pranks on them, he doesn't actually do that. And at the very end of the story, it's Joseph in Genesis chapter 50, verse 19. Joseph says to his brothers, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." He reassured them and spoke kindly to them.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so, like we said, he plays a few pranks on them, sends them back and forth to his dad, but then he ends up saying that to them. And so he ends up being able to save an entire nation from starving and dying. And he ends up being able to save his family from starving and dying because of what happened. Now, that was only because of him taking these green lights that we have described.
Totally. So kind of break down this whole green light thing. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, if you were to go back and read Joseph's story through and through, which is about Genesis chapter 40 through the end of Genesis is kind of where it starts.
Yep.
But if you don't want to read that much, because it is a lot of reading, what happens is that every single opportunity, Joseph takes the decision that does one of three things, or actually all of three things, which is he chooses the decision that honors himself,
Okay.
honors the people around him, including family. So honors people is what I'll say. And above all else, honors God. And I think that is the key to taking a green light. That's a green light. If you've ever been at an intersection like Joseph is, with the woman who is throwing herself at him even though she's married.
Yep.
With the situation with Pharaoh, with the situation with his brothers who have wronged him standing in front of him and he has power now. I believe that Joseph was able to move forward well because he looked for the green light, which is those three things.
Yep.
So honor meaning to respect, to hold in high regard. Does this honor me? Does this honor people? And does this honor God?
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. And this will be most useful in the really tricky situations. And especially the really unfair situations that are usually outside of your control and involving someone who is an authority and is in control and maybe treating you unfairly. So I don't know, like, say, like, you and your parents aren't getting along and, like, just, like, they're being kind of mean. Like, it's like, man, it's like, how do I handle that situation? Maybe for whatever reason, like a teacher has decided that they're just kind of against you. Like you rub them the wrong way and they're holding a grudge. And it's like, man, like, what do you do? Or like some friends put you in an impossible situation. And yeah, it's tricky. It's not the situations where there's like a clear right or wrong. It's like, do I kick the dog or do I not kick the dog? It's like, well, you don't kick the dog. But then there's those vague ones of like, there's a robot going across the intersection. It's not a person. I'm not harming a person. And this organization has so much money. Like, this is nothing to them. And it's fun. But it's also destroying someone's property. Is this right or wrong? But then there's like literally a green light. So it's like,
yeah. And so that was it's like, there's literally a green light and there's this robot.
Yeah.
And so, like we said in the beginning, green lights in these metaphorical situations aren't always as visible as the green lights in, like, the physical situation of being actually at an intersection with... I know that most of you guys, if you don't drive, you want to one day, so this surely makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that you don't go on a red light.
Yeah. Hopefully you know that by now.
And if you do go on a red light, you're at risk for many different things.
That's true. That's a really good point.
And so... you can go on red lights, but you shouldn't. And we can break more of that down later. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
And then there's yellow lights and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the whole point is when you're in a sticky situation, and by sticky I mean you're not really sure what to do and it feels gross.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, how do I move forward well? Well, look at Joseph. He could have done what he wanted to do with Potiphar's wife, and it probably would have felt good to do it. He probably could have taken revenge on his brothers. It would have felt good to do it. He could have done a lot of different things to handle the situations that he did.
Yep.
And while it would have felt good in the moment, like it would feel good to run a red light to get to where you're going faster, it feels good in the moment, I feel like he would have put himself in a situation of serious repercussions.
Oh, for sure. He probably would have gotten killed.
Among other things. Maybe arrested much earlier, put in a worse position in prison. Like, who knows? Above all else, not in a prime position to save his family, who he loved still.
Right.
Because all of that led to him being in charge.
Yep.
And saving everybody.
Yep. And we can't overlook the fact that him choosing green lights often came at a cost. Like, he was in prison for years because he took a green light. That's hard.
That is really hard. And my guess is if you guys take this to heart and say, okay, I'm going to look for more green lights in situations where, like we said, it's a sticky situation, it's uncomfortable, it's yucky, it doesn't feel good, and you're not really sure what the right answer is. Sometimes taking a green light doesn't always feel good.
Yep.
But I promise you that if you choose situations that honor you, honor me, honor you, honor people, including your family and friends, just to be clear, and honor God, you will be in a far better situation than if you were to just do what felt good in the moment.
Yeah. Can you take just a minute and explain what you mean by honor?
And so honor, I have the definition, and I hinted on it a little bit earlier. So honor is to hold in high respect and high esteem, and another definition is to adhere to what is right. And so honor would be to adhere to what is right to you, which is sometimes not always what you want to do. To honor people is would be to do right by those people, even if it doesn't always feel good, like revenge would be. And to honor God is to do right by what God wants for you, the God who created you, and the God who, I don't know if you know this, but loves you and wants to be there for you, who was also there for Joseph throughout it all. And Joseph kept saying, even in the midst of all his crap, he was like, God's good in taking care of me.
Yep. Yeah.
How does that sound?
It's good. It leaves us with enough to talk about.
Yeah, and so I think that's all we got for today. We got some questions that your leaders are going to start talking to you guys about, which we're excited about, and we're going to continue with more green lights next week.
Can one of the questions be, is it wrong to run over a robot?
One of the questions will most definitely be, is it wrong to run over a robot?
All right. All right, well, that's it. Good to see you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Nice. No! Uncle Jim! Sit!
That's why I would
website.
say go into cryptocurrency. That's my...
No!
It was moving up here, and then it's led me to you guys.
Woo!
And now I'm here. I do know that the thing that helped